All right, class, we're going to finish up our reading of Fahrenheit 451, Chapter 2. This is your Friday reading. It should cover questions 23, 24, and 25, which will end this out on this section for your homework, too. So it's kind of a shorter section, so this video shouldn't be as long. It does have some important stuff, though. So right away, as it starts, he's walked into the building and he notices the hound isn't there. That is a bit of foreshadowing, okay? And we'll see where that's coming from in a minute. Seems kind of like a pointless detail. One of the things you want to look for when you're really analyzing literature, especially on your own, is details that seem out of place. Because if they're out of place, the author purposely put them there. So we need to stop and look at why. All right. So Montag goes upstairs to where Beatty and the rest of the crew are playing cards. And this is a point where he's going to have to hand in a book. So let's see how Beatty deals with this. Well, he said to the men playing cards, here comes a very strange beast, which in all tongues is called a fool. Now that's Beatty talking. Says he put his hand out to one side, palm up, for a gift. Montag put the book in it. Without even glancing at the title, Beatty tossed the book in the trash basket and lit a cigarette. Who are a little wise, the best fools be. Welcome back, Montag. I hope you'll be sitting with us now that your fever is done and your sickness over. Sit in for a hand of poker. So Beatty quotes a couple of famous lines. We're going to see in this section Beatty quoting a ton of stuff, which this is another flaw in Bradbury's writing, in my opinion. He doesn't really develop this any. Why does Beatty know all this stuff? What's the purpose? Now, I've got my theories. I honestly think that Beatty's meant to represent, limiting of resources. Instead of it being money or oil or something like that, this, in their world, it's knowledge. And you want a lot of people, the powerful people, want to concentrate whatever those resources are for themselves. And while it's obvious if one or two guys own all the oil, the power they have, or, the fact that billionaires have so many of our resources tied up in their possession and not out there in circulation, those are obvious. But how does knowledge work that way? Well, guys, I don't think you guys understand how powerful knowledge truly is and how important information is. It's why there's such a push for things like making the internet free and things like that, because there's so much information on there that you're limiting to the hands of, of course, internet's not prohibitively expensive, but still, the thing is that if you have a certain group of people that have all the knowledge, they can corrupt other people, and force them to do what they want because you don't have any way of understanding if I'm telling you the truth or not. So knowledge is important. It truly is. So Beatty seems to be part of that. Beatty didn't even look at the book, though. Did you notice that? He just kind of casually throws it in there like he doesn't, like it's not a big deal to him, all right? The next few pages or the next few paragraphs have a lot of imagery about hands. We saw that earlier when Montag stole the book from the last fire. And then we also see it here where Montag feels like his hands are dirty because this is an allusion to the play Macbeth, Shakespeare's play. We're talking about, blood being on your hands. I feel like this is an allusion to that. Montag feels guilty in a way, and he keeps going back to wash his hands because of this. The rest of this section is kind of problematic for a lot of people. Beatty is basically going to talk about this dream, and I put that in quotation marks because who knows if he actually had a dream. But a dream he had about him and Montag having a conversation where they take turns quoting things back and forth to each other. And knowing the quotes really isn't that important, but that's a huge section here. They keep going back and forth. Faber is in Montag's ear saying, be careful. He's trying to confuse you. I mean, Faber's trying to keep Montag grounded because it just feels like Beatty is beating him to death with these quotes, just slamming him with them and showing him how one author says this and one says this, and you were an idiot to believe any of it. And he just really tears him down because Beatty's a bully. He really is. When he's done berating Montag to where Montag just feels like he's been in a boxing match, Faber says something really powerful and interesting. All right, here's what he says. He says, all right, he's had his say. You must take it in. I'll have my say too in the next few hours, and you'll take it in, and you'll try to judge then and make your decision as to which way to jump or fall. But I want it to be your decision, not mine and not Captain Beatty's. But remember that the captain belongs to the most dangerous enemy to truth and freedom, the solid, unmoving cattle of the majority. Oh God, the terrible tyranny of the majority. We all have our harps to play, and it's up to you now to know with which ear you'll listen. So Faber basically tells him, look, there's Beatty's side of it. I'm going to give you a few hours, and I'm going to tell you mine. And the key there is him giving him a few hours. The point here is I want you to think about what he said. I want you to honestly process it. And then I'm going to tell you my side, and then you can process that. And then you make your decision based on the two. I mean, that is such a good argumentation style. Instead of like one person says, then you immediately jump in and say they're wrong, and here's the way it's supposed to be. And if you don't agree with me, then you're an idiot. Faber doesn't do any of that. He basically says, reflect on what you've heard. then reflect on what I've said, and then you have to make the decision. All right. At this point, a fire alarm goes off, kind of breaks this tension, and they're about to head off on yet another fire call. And Beatty is behaving very strangely during this. He acts like the call's no big deal. He initially doesn't even get up. And then he's like, well, come on, this is a special case. Like he knows there's something special. He even I think it says he drives and he never drives and he's driving really chaotically and a bunch of just weird stuff going on. The entire time this is going on, Montag's in his head, like, I just don't know whether I can go through with this. How am I possibly supposed to start these fires when I feel this way? And then the end of the chapter comes. I told you this was a short section, but it is a massive cliffhanger. Let me read the ending of this. It says, the men ran like cripples in their clumsy boots as quietly as spiders. This is when they've arrived at the house. At last, Montag raised his eyes and turned. Beatty was watching his face. Something the matter, Montag? Why, said Montag slowly, we stopped in front of my house. So as the chapter ends, we know that they have pulled up in front of Montag's house. So explains kind of Beatty's behavior earlier, that Beatty knew this was coming. In fact, he tells us in a little bit that he had already gotten a warning earlier in the night. So pretty scary. I mean, we're at the climax. We talked before about plot maps, and as you see this ramping up happening in your rising action, as you get closer and closer to the climax, that incline just, in good books almost hits straight up. And that's what's happened. We are now knowing that as chapter 3 starts, we are going to be in the climax. We're going to be with Montag dealing with Beatty, your antagonist and protagonist, having their face off and figuring out what happens there. The other thing is we realize there's a good bit of book left. So the following action in this is also very important. So as we get started next week, we'll handle that climax right away on Monday. And then we'll start seeing about the rest of the stuff that's put in this. We're going to meet our third guide, Granger, and see what he has to say. A very, very very philosophical discussion that's really interesting. And then we will be done with this book. So please don't forget, by the time, if you follow this day by day, you're past due on your test. But hopefully you did well on your chapter 1 test. Next week, by Wednesday, we'll have taken a test over all of these videos in the reading and the questions for chapter 2. It'll be just like chapter 1 test. And then we'll get finished with that. And then we'll start looking at what we're going to do to close out the year. So thank you guys again for taking the time to view these videos. I hope they've been helpful. All right. Have a great weekend.